Welcome back to part 2 of the Nutrition Heretic podcast interview with Dr. Carolyn Dean. Last week we talked with Dr. Dean about why magnesium deficiency is so widespread and the many common health disorders that stem from it. This week we continue talking with her about the catch-22 of supplementation and the picometer-sized stabilized ionic magnesium supplement that addresses the problems experienced with other forms of magnesium supplements. Coming up next.
Meet Gina. Gina wanted to lose weight, so she spent 2 years fasting, detoxing, and dabbling with vegan diets while practicing a shit ton of yoga to lose 25 pounds. But it took so long that nobody noticed. Then, Gina started Frenching her food by eating fatty cheeses, butter, sausages, and red meat, and lost 15 more pounds in only 2 months. Everybody noticed this time. Frenching your food unlocks the riddle of weight loss that skinny French chicks use to slim down, look young, and live longer despite doing everything wrong. Be like Gina. Start Frenching your food today by visiting nutritionheretic.com/Frenching.
Fat is bad for you.
I just pop a pill and I'm fine.
Meat is murder.
It's time for bad food punishment. It's time for real nourishment. It's time for the Nutrition Heretic.
The following program is provided as information only and may not be construed as medical or health advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the basis of the information provided here. Please consult with a licensed healthcare professional or doctor on any matter relating to your health and well-being.
So, what's the problem with the magnesium supplements that are currently on the market? Because I know that when I do the research and I'm looking through my medical books and I'm, looking at websites and studies, and everybody's got a different form of magnesium that they want us to take, right? There's the oxide and the whatever. What's kind of like the issue with the supplements?
Sure. What's interesting, a very bright woman who owned a magnesium oxide company decades ago, she had the idea to give free magnesium oxide supplements to researchers to research magnesium. So it meant when the early studies were written up, it was all about magnesium oxide.
Right.
So most doctors, if they do ever recommend a magnesium, it'll be magnesium oxide, because everybody knows that the magnesium citrate is used in massive doses for the huge laxative effect as a bowel prep for your colonoscopy. So that's obviously a drug.
Right.
So, it comes from the magnesium oxide studies, and then magnesium citrate. Most doctors say, oh, it's just a laxative. So the doctors, they're out of it. But since my book's been around, I keep saying that my book created the magnesium industry, because you look at these websites, Adrian, and most of them have my book displayed until I get after them to take it off. Right. Because, I say any magnesium is good. Magnesium oxide studies were all positive. Right. But then, over the years, I began to see, well, we're not getting enough magnesium. I couldn't get enough magnesium for my heart palpitation and leg cramps, which are magnesium deficiency symptoms. And I started to use a transdermal magnesium, and it was just so irritating for my skin. And I began to take a lot of Epsom salts baths, and finally I created my own magnesium, which is non-laxative. So I end up in the new book saying, look, there's Epsom salts baths, you can soak in them, you can absorb this magnesium sulfate, and you can feel good and start to realize how important magnesium could be to you. And it's not going to interfere with your drugs. I mean, some people will say to me, well, I'm on these 12 drugs. I'm afraid to take magnesium. And you just want to rip their throat out. I mean, it's just so bizarre.
Yeah. Somebody who also in my family, near and dear to me, yeah, she was like, oh, well, you never know what you're going to get. I'm like, they have you on Valium. Are you serious?
Yeah. Do you have Valium deficiency by any chance?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's the Epsom salt. And then I do say there are some very good magnesium citrate powders sweetened with organic stevia. You can mix them in water and sip them through the day. Even those give me the laxative effect. And then, I work with a magnesium that's non-laxative. And contrary to what the FDA says, if someone has a magnesium deficiency symptom that's misdiagnosed as a drug, why treat it with a drug when you should be treating it with magnesium?
Right. I would think, even let's try it as a first line.
Yeah.
Right? Because by the time they come into you, like, is it really like this had to have been done yesterday?
Right.
Like, oh, good thing you came in because you were going to have a heart attack this afternoon if you didn't show up in my office.
Mm-hmm. These people, the scenario I mentioned about you get the hypertension, you get on a diuretic, a month later, your blood pressure's worse, so you're put on a calcium channel blocker drug and the ACE inhibitor. 3 months later, your blood pressure's no better, and now you've developed high cholesterol and high blood sugar from all the magnesium deficiency from the drugs you've been taking. Mm-hmm. So they're creating patients for life.
Right. Exactly. It's a continuity program, girl. This is like marketing 102, where you create your funnel, right? They put you into this funnel of, we start you out with this and then we just keep moving up. And then, eventually we have you in hospice or wherever, to get that kickback.
It's definitely recipe medicine. And I think it has to be that way. There weren't that many drugs when I was in practice, but now there's so many drugs. They're now the biologicals because they know the drugs aren't working. I mean, get this title, Adrian, in my Death by Modern Medicine book,
I've seen that.
I talk about this, what was his name? Rose, some Dr. Rose of one of the major drug companies in Europe. He said, the drugs don't work half of the time, at least half the time they're not working.
Right.
And he was putting down the drugs and everyone said, what's he going on about? He's dissing his whole industry,
right.
But he wants to do genetic testing to find out what drugs will work on people. So they're trying to individualize drugs. So instead of giving it up and saying, look, the drugs aren't working, the vaccines aren't working. I mean, the flu shot may work 4% of the time.
Whoopee.
Let's go to the nutrients. Well, but it's true, though. They are trying to buy up all the supplement companies and put vitamins and minerals on prescription and thus make them very expensive.
Right.
But it's, now they're going to these biologicals and trying to match you with your drug. It's like, golly, let's just give me an exercise program and some good food and a couple of good supplements and forget about the fact that I need to have drugs in the first place.
Right. Well, I think that's the old adage, and I'm going to say it wrong, but, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been or some like that. But you know where I'm going with this, which is that
I don't know if I know where you're going with that.
We're looking too far out into the stratosphere. We're like looking for something out there as if we haven't had a sweet spot in human history where health was possible. Where food and sanitation were abundant enough to achieve the level of health that everybody says that they want. Mm-hmm. I really do think that sanitation, and I know that it's quoted by the American Association of Pediatric Physicians or whatever, that health in general has improved the most when sanitation, we had running water, with sanitation. And so, if we could get back to that sweet spot instead of constantly looking for some convoluted, newfangled way of, biohacking the drug to the person or whatever.
That's right.
We need to just back up and say, okay, these guys are like 100. What was going on when they were born? Let's take a look. Let's just step back a little bit before the Cheetos and the Cheerios hit the market. Let's take a step back and see, where that sweet spot was.
And we're doing it. You're doing it. I'm doing it. There's a certain, maybe 1% of the population or less that's doing it. But, the status quo, the mainstream is never going to do it.
Right.
The medicine and the drug companies are not going to give up. If you have a whole medical education system that never takes into account nutrients, then that's it.
Right.
They just won't look in that direction.
Right.
The amount of attack on nutrients is incredible, and yet you'll go to the poison centers and there'll be no deaths from nutrients.
Right.
No deaths.
Right.
And what do they push? They say there's, a couple 100,000 calls about vitamins to these poison centers. Yeah, calls, fine. There's 55,000 supplements out there. Supplements are lining the walls in some people's houses. Kids are going to get into them. So,
right.
The parent will call the poison center. Well, what about this? I mean, iron can be a problem, but other supplements, not so much. There are no deaths due to supplements. But in my Death by Modern Medicine book, there's over 1 million deaths, unnecessary early deaths per year due to medicine.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we've known this for a couple decades now, that modern medicine has caused more deaths than, pretty much, just like the big three combined, heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. So when, where am I going with this? I guess just in terms of, how we should proceed with magnesium, right? We know that there's no deaths, but is there a point where you say, okay, you brought up the laxative effect. This is probably the best way to describe it. You brought up the laxative effect. Oh, well, you only use magnesium citrate for the laxative effect. Is there a place where you don't want to use magnesium? You know what I'm saying? Like you get an effect,
right.
but you're approaching it the wrong way. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, there are a couple ways of looking at there are 4 contraindications, outright contraindications. There's kidney failure, and I kind of debunked that a bit actually in the new book. Myasthenia gravis, that's where magnesium can accentuate the muscle relaxation that's part of myasthenia gravis. But it's usually just, when in hospital, people are given intravenous magnesium and it affects them. People with a slow enough heart rate where the magnesium might relax it a little too much. But these are people who are usually on a pacemaker.
Right.
And just outright bowel obstruction so that you can't get the laxative effect if you take too much magnesium. Otherwise, what does happen with some people, Adrian, there's so many people with, chronic diseases. They're on a lot of medications. They've got chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. They've got layers and layers of problems. Well, if they start taking magnesium and think, oh, this is safe, this is simple, I'll just take a normal dose that I see in the bottle, they can start revving themselves up so much in those 700, 800 enzyme systems that they feel a little worse in the beginning. Mm-hmm. I have a good blog on that called When Magnesium Makes Me Worse.
Yes, I saw that. And there's a chapter in the book on that too.
Yeah, just to remind people that, when you're when you're on the edge of your health and when you start anything new, you really should start slowly. So it's basically telling people to go really, really slow. Like with my products, they're so effective, so concentrated, so dynamic that we just tell people to take like a quarter teaspoon to start, or
Right.
some people even start off with a few drops and then they'll build it to get their body used to it. You know, a chronically ill body can be so hyper alert that anything you take, you think you're reacting to it. And sometimes I'll say to people, well, those are signs of health.
Right.
You don't even know what health is.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and that's why I can't use that word in my house, because people have these misconceptions. But yeah, a lot of people don't know what healthy feels like. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. So tell us about your supplements. What separates them from just, I'm not going to name any company names, but they got a shop. Okay.
Yeah. You can Google this stuff. What happened with me, I quickly mentioned it earlier. I used to get such a laxative effect with any type of oral magnesium that it actually drained me of more magnesium. So that's to be avoided. I was trying to work on heart palpitations, leg cramps, some insomnia, neck tension from writing hundreds of books and, all that sort of thing. And I tried to get a magnesium company or a mineral company to research creating a non-laxative magnesium. And I couldn't find anyone. They said, it costs too much. It's too much education to try to get people to understand a non-laxative magnesium. So finally, I had to do it myself. So that's the long and short of it. It's picometer size. It's the size that plants will absorb through their plant rootlets from the soil. So in order to get minerals into the plants, they have to be broken down by little worms, and all the action in the soil has to occur. So if you're using a lot of drugs and chemicals on the soil, they're going to kill the worms, and you're not going to get your minerals broken down. So the plants take up the minerals, and then we're supposed to eat the plants. But let me sidebar on this. I've had clients and customers who say, well, I'm drinking 40 ounces of green drink a day, or, I'm a raw vegan, I'm getting enough greens. And I say, well, you have to look at the dirt in which your plants are grown, because if the minerals and magnesium aren't in the dirt, they're not going to be in your plants.
Right.
And it shocks these people because, they're talking about their heart palpitations and leg cramps, which are probably, two of the most common symptoms of magnesium deficiency. And yet they think they're doing the best thing for their health. They have biohacked the information to think that they got it all together.
Right.
So, and the other fact about this, the magnesium that I made, it's a stabilized ion of magnesium.
Okay.
So in being a stabilized ion, it's absorbed directly into the cells. It's not jamming itself up against chloride or something else to
That's
make
what I was going to say. So is that what you were referring to when we talked about fluoride before?
Yeah.
So it's more reactive normally from that charge. Okay.
Yeah,
from the positive charge. Okay.
So if you stabilize the magnesium, it's not going to bounce around and join anything else. It's just going to gravitate right into the cell. And inside the cell should be water. When you get minerals inside your cells, then it'll attract water by osmosis. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll have people who say, I'm taking more magnesium, or I'm taking your multiple minerals, and I feel dehydrated. Well, drink more water.
Right.
Your minerals need the water. And, I know you talked about the 8 glasses or 8 cups of water book. I tell people to take your body weight in pounds, divide that in half, and then drink that many ounces of water a day.
Right.
So that it's by weight.
Right. And then and also to add a pinch of salt in there. You mentioned.
I go above the pinch. I mean, you can start with the pinch to get used to it.
Oh,
but
totally.
I'm talking about a quarter teaspoon in a liter or a quart of water.
Right.
And, some people say, oh, I don't like the taste. But after a while, your body craves it.
Yeah.
Just dead plain water, it tastes dead.
Right.
And you really like the alive feeling. And it's got to be, in Hawaii, we have this nice kind of coppery colored sea salt. It's got to have some color to it, which means it's not been refined out.
Right.
If you're just looking at a white sea salt, as far as I can see, it doesn't have all the minerals you want.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting area that I want to research some more, because I know in northern Italy, actually throughout Italy and southern France, in southern France there's one called Sel de Camargue, and it's like from the Camargue region in southern France, and that's where they have those beautiful white horses. But this is a totally white salt, but they say that it is absolutely not bleached.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to like really, be on the ground with the producers and see what they're actually doing and to find out.
Yeah. I wonder if they can do an analysis of what's in their salt. Yeah. I'm looking.
Yeah, they do report it to be very similar to Celtic sea salt. As far as the minerals that are in there. But yeah, for whatever reason, it just supposedly in that area, it's just naturally white.
Right.
Who knows?
Interesting. Yeah. I know. And when I make a general statement about don't take white sea salt, exactly. It's like, oh my God, then someone will, like yourself, will say, oh, that's not true. You cannot make a blatant statement anymore.
Right, exactly. I mean, well, that's just it. It's like I do the same thing. I'll say something and then I know someone who has blah, blah, blah. So what's your flagship product is Remag.
Mm-hmm.
And now how, because you've got 7, 8 different products. Tell us a little bit about each of them and where people would maybe gravitate towards one versus another or a combination.
Well, I think in my experience, Adrienne, over the years, I was around before there were even vitamin stores in my city.
Whoa.
I was around before all these supplement companies. So I saw the whole industry develop, and I saw doctors who started using supplements and, these aren't working. Let's do intramuscular. Let's do intravenous. They just start using more and more and more. And I started saying, well, maybe they're just not being absorbed.
Right.
So I brought all the information about watching people develop chronic fatigue and allergies and hypoglycemia and then getting into the low thyroid and early menopause. And I just said, well, there's this basic groundwork of minerals. And you started off with that minerals are the basic building blocks of the body. And so I built the Remag, and the Remite is a multiple mineral. And I say, this is what health is all about, is your minerals. And after that, I looked at just the simple detox. It's called Realign. It's 2 sulfur-based amino acids, and the sulfur is important for the sulfur detoxification pathways in the liver. And methionine is a precursor to glutathione. There's methylated Bs in the Realign, and the methyl groups are important for the methylation detoxification pathways. And now these days, there's so many people talking about their, the genetics and their methylation problems. So all of a sudden there's a nice methylated B product. But I think the whole MTHFR methylation business is because people are deficient in minerals, and then there's this backlash. So with the Realign, it's a real basic. The Bs are good for the adrenals. There's your detoxification, and to me, instead of putting people on chelation and flushing their liver, doing bowel detox, doing all these crazy detoxes, I say, let the body decide when it wants to detox by just giving it this daily support. Right. And to me, doing it gently is much more important, especially with the complexity that people express these days. I have an awesome protein powder that, everybody says is the best they've ever tasted. I've got a calcium solution, the same thing, stabilized ions of calcium. And I also have some vanadium and boron in there. And the calcium, I held back on that a while because I'm not a fan of calcium. I think you can get it in your food, but there are enough people who won't eat dairy, can't eat dairy, and they're not going to, make their bone broth every day. So
and what do you say to the people who say that, I can get all the calcium I want from my vegetables?
Well, you'd have to prove that to yourself. You do your blood testing. There are ionized calcium blood tests. I wish there were ionized magnesium blood tests so we could know exactly what's going on with our magnesium, but there aren't. As I said earlier, they're using a serum magnesium, only measures 1% of the magnesium, so it's ignored. That 1% of magnesium, Adrian, it'll always look good because the body has to keep it at a certain perfect level to keep the heart beating properly. So there's this, basic biofeedback in the blood with enough magnesium for your heart. But then after a while, the magnesium stores in your muscles and bones are so depleted. You're sitting in the doctor's office, your eyes muscle is twitching, your throat is seizing up, you've got a migraine headache, your angina is kicking up, your blood pressure's high, your neck muscles you've got all the symptoms of magnesium deficiency, and they say, oh, all your magnesium's just fine.
Right.
Right. So, those, I've got some RNA drops too. People can look into that. That's kind of a very unique barley. We grow barley seeds. And I was on the way to making a water purifier with this, but then people at the factory started feeling so healthy. Over the years, we made it into a product. So, there's really only kind of 5 basic products. And that's what I like. I really get frustrated myself when I go to a lot of these websites where, somebody has 100 products.
Yeah.
There's no system to it.
Right.
It's like
It's like, I heard this is selling this month. Let's make a product.
Yeah. Right. And the people that, the customers that come to us who say, oh my gosh, finally I have, 5 products at work. I feel better and I can wean off all my other stuff. And, they empty their cupboards because who doesn't have, 30 or 40 different products in their cupboard?
Not me. So, but when you talk about detox, that's actually another sore spot with me, which is that there's this huge emphasis on getting everything out of the body. It's the same thing like what I opened up with when I talked about the water, and it's like, it doesn't have calories, so you can have as much as you want because you want to flush everything else out. Everything else is poison. All right, and so we take these very negative spins on the food that we ingest, and that's just a whole other food relationship thing that develops out of there, a lot of eating disorders. But, this whole detox culture, I think, feeds that even more. And what I keep saying to people is it's not so much about the stuff you're pulling out. It's about the stuff that you're displacing. So, like when we detox, it's not so much, yes, it's getting that stuff out, but it's putting the thing that your body really wanted in the first place. So if you're, pulling out fluoride, you want to make sure that the chloride is there to replace it. You want to make sure that the thing that your body actually can use and that isn't a neurotoxin or otherwise a toxin, it is the thing that you're making available. Right. Because, sometimes because a lot of times we're not even ingesting those foods again, right? We're detoxing and then we just go back to whatever we were doing before. We don't chew any better than we used to. Yeah. A lot of all these different things that we know, the enzymes and so on. We're not taking care of that side. And then what ends up happening is, now we live next to a power plant and there's some whatever in the air, barium that's being released, and our body's sucking that up because there's no defenses inside. We basically stripped out one and replaced it with another.
Right. And the whole notion that you talked about before of making the body the bad, bad body, dirty body,
Yeah.
squeeze out the bad stuff. Whereas, the body does its own detoxification.
Right.
We forget about that because there are detoxification pathways. They're in the medical books, the P450 system.
Yes.
So the body's doing it all the time. It's just constantly busy doing it, and I think we mainly have to support it. I got very concerned about liver detoxification when I was doing work in the early 90s in New York with AIDS and chronic fatigue, and when these mostly guys came in and said, well, I did this liver detox and that's when I got worse. Well, the liver can kind of harbor viruses, and maybe in a bit of a protective mode, it hides them away from the rest of the body. You start opening up the liver, doing liver detox, you'll release those viruses.
Yeah.
And that's not something that, I don't know if I can find any science behind that, but we saw that clinically.
Right. Well, that's, to me, when you see it clinically, that's kind of where science starts, right?
Yeah, that's right.
With the observations. Unfortunately, the experience of a lot of physicians is not being taken seriously because, we've got to have somebody who actually isn't a clinician. Unfortunately, a lot of these studies are done by researchers who don't see patients. Mm-hmm. And they are kind of calling the shots, and that worries me in and of itself. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay researchers, but when it's so heavily skewed towards their results versus the clinical results, so that we're not allowed to trust the clinical results now.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of the whole HMO business too, where the case manager is not a medical person.
Right.
And they are calling the shots. The FDA is calling the shots on me that I'm not allowed to talk about disease. I know I've talked about it a lot in this conversation, but mainly we're talking about health and keeping people well and giving them the building blocks to stay well, and recognizing that magnesium deficiency can be misdiagnosed. And, it's not my fault that doctors are misdiagnosing magnesium deficiency as a disease. I'm calling it what it is, a magnesium deficiency, and in your muscles, in your nerves, in your whole system that can make it look like a disease.
Right. So I'm going to close out with one last question. Mm-hmm. And that is with regards to testing. I know that in the book you recommend certain testing, but I know there's going to be people out there who are like, I just want this now. I know that I've got, the cramps in my legs and the sciatica and, the high blood pressure, what have you, the low energy. Is it okay, would you say, or I mean, I'm pretty sure you can't recommend that people just take magnesium. But what's the worst thing that will happen if somebody were to take it without doing some testing first?
Right. Well, what's really great about magnesium, it has the fail-safe of diarrhea. If you take too much at once, you'll get the laxative effect and it's not going to build up. And this is kind of awesome, actually, because it's anthropological. We humans grew up near oceans because we could get fish and seaweed, and the salt water, ocean water, has 3 times the magnesium as calcium. So I think the fail-safe began there, where we could actually get a lot more magnesium in our diets than calcium. So if we had too much magnesium, okay, flush it out with diarrhea. Whereas calcium, you're not going to have your ice cream and yogurt in, Paleolithic times. You're just going to, what are you going to have? Fish bones.
Right.
And so the mechanism to conserve calcium was vitamin D.
Yeah.
Vitamin D grabs calcium really hard and helps to direct it to the bones. So does magnesium. So does vitamin K2, which is in butter oil, actually.
Yes.
So you've got this fail-safe of magnesium, which I can say to people, look, do an Epsom salts baths. It's never harmed anyone, and it's your grandmother used to use them, and the midwives used them on pregnant women, and then from there that I do like people to get testing, especially if they're on medication. I personally have never had my magnesium tested. I just test myself. When I stopped taking my Remag, after a day or so, my heart palpitations came back.
Right.
When I was first saturating my body, if I missed a dose, my palpitations came back. I was taking 1,200 milligrams, and I'm not a big person, and I was taking, 4 times, the 350 RDA, where, I had to saturate myself from decades of depletion. And after a couple of years, I didn't need that much anymore. I only take a teaspoon now. I only take 300 milligrams now. But I'm also using, we have a Remag lotion for people who, want, a body cream, or they don't like the very strong taste of the Remag.
Right.
So
it doesn't burn, does it?
No, it is. Right. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I when I did that, I was like, now I understand what it's like when men get kicked in the nuts. It's just, was so vile.
I'm such an experimenter. I think I'm going to go out and get some magnesium oil and spray it on my armpits and see what that's all about.
It might just be me, because I had my daughter spray it on and she didn't seem to flinch.
Okay,
so
just you.
There's something wrong with me.
Yeah, so the testing now. Okay, I've dissed the serum magnesium test because it's only in 1% of the body. So actually what, people can biohack this themselves. You can do online lab testing. Yeah. I don't know why the FDA hasn't stopped it, but you can go to the one I refer to in my book is requestatest.com. You can get a magnesium RBC blood test. It's a step up from the serum magnesium. So I tell people, get your magnesium RBC test. It's only $49.
Right.
Your copay, my copay has gone from $50 to $75 to $100 just
That's
to
ridiculous.
Eyeball a doctor for 5 minutes. It's insane. So you can get a $49 magnesium RBC test, but then when you get the results, you want to be up at the top of the results. The results are like 4.2 to 6.8. You want to be like 6.5 because you don't want to be in the 80% of the population that's deficient in magnesium. And then you get that test and you start your magnesium intake. That test may actually drop in the first 3 months because you're using up all your magnesium. It's just flying into those 700, 800 enzyme systems. So it's not hanging out in your blood cells. It's doing its work.
Wow.
And then after, 6 months, a year, it's climbing and climbing. You're feeling better almost immediately, but your blood's going to take a little longer.
Right.
And you follow your symptoms. You Google my name and magnesium symptoms, and you find I have one blog called 100 Factors that can give you magnesium deficiency, or it's in my Magnesium Miracle book.
Right.
And that book actually might be good to have just to take to your doctor and say, look, there's these 600 references, people seem to be getting better. Oh, look, she won an award from the Rhythmia Foundation for her work with magnesium. Oh, look at this.
Right.
And see if they just snarl at you or not.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for informing us about this, because even though I knew that magnesium was necessary, I really didn't understand how integral it is to the 700 to 800 enzyme systems, for instance. So yeah, definitely something that we don't want to take for granted, but it definitely answers for me why I feel like $1,000,000 when I do get a chance to get down to the beach and soak even just for 15 minutes. Sometimes I people might be grossed out by this, but sometimes that's my bath for the day because I don't want to wash off that magnesium and that seawater because I know that it's full of life. And the stuff that my body needs to pull in transdermally if it's not able to fully metabolize through food.
Excellent. Yeah, I know. We're just making people jealous all over because we both live in Hawaii.
Yeah,
and we're just so blessed.
We are.
Yeah, we are so blessed.
We are. Well, if you ever get over to the Big Island, please come and visit me.
Yes.
And I will do the same if I ever fly over. Actually, there's a direct flight right from my town to Maui, so I should just come over. One afternoon or something. But in the meantime, we can find you at drcarolyndean.com. That's drcarolyndean.com. And you can sign up for her free newsletter. You can also find her at drcarolyndeanlive.com where you can get 7 free ebooks under her book section. And she also has, actually tell us a little bit about your online wellness program. That's a long program. It's a 2-year program.
Gosh. It's a 2-year program. And it took me 2 years to write it.
Wow.
It's crazy. You know, that was just before the 2008 economic crash. And I started writing it because I thought, look, there's so much information I want to impart to people. Yeah. I'll write it all out. They'll know everything I know. They'll be as healthy as I am. I was walking the beach this morning and I bumped into just someone I wave at all the time. And she and I started talking. And when somehow she asked me my age and I said, I'm 68. And she literally dropped to the ground and said, you look 40. And I just loved her to death. I talked to her on the spot. So, you know, where was I going with this? I just got so involved.
We were talking about how long the 2-year program. And see, and what's, you know what, why that cracks me up? Because every time I meet someone, it doesn't matter. They can have like one foot in the grave and they're like, I just know it's just one thing I need to fix. And I'm like, you have no idea. You just told me that you know nothing about nutrition right now because there's so much that we need to fix.
I just need that one supplement.
Right.
Yeah. That's the drug mentality. So, you know, when I have these 104 modules, every week I send out a module to get people to, you know, educated about their nutrition or supplements or mind over matter, sleep, exercise. You know, I cover everything. And it's an awesome system, but so many people, they just got so stressed out after the economic crash. So I don't have time to read. And that's right around the time I started looking for, you know, a good non-laxative magnesium. And many people said, look, just tell me what to take. Right. And so I diverted into this dietary supplement company. But the modules are still there. I give a lot of them away for free, actually, in my webinars. I do a lot of webinars just to help educate people. I have a great time. I love talking. As you can tell.
Same here. At bit.ly, which is bit.ly/Dean Gifts, you can get 4 free weeks of her online wellness program. And so tell us, as far as what people learn in there, is this, I didn't get a clear view if this is a little bit more for practitioners. Is it a little bit more for the lay person with just kind of, like you said, tell me what to do? Or is there a little bit more of the sciencey, make a decision based on this? You see what I'm saying?
No, it's not sciencey. It's pretty lay person where you learn about, say, nasal lubrication or how to sleep without electricity or the power of protein, the stomach vacuum. I have exercises, safe cooking, backwards walking, how to sit on the toilet.
Right. Ooh. Kinky.
It's just, and people will say, well, I can get this on the internet, but to me, I covered everything, from start to finish of how to get you healthy. And I give a number of choices throughout each module. And I say, look, do 20% of what I tell you to do, and you'll have 80% of the results, the 20-80
right. Pareto principle. And people love it. It's really great information. But as I said, it's if you start something like this and you don't have energy and you're just lying in bed, you don't want to try to do anything. And that's where, as you said earlier, it's almost like the Remag is my gateway drug, so that people take magnesium and they feel so much better. They're able then to cook their own meals or do a bit of exercise. You don't have to sleep as much when you're on good minerals. So you have, I only sleep 6 hours a day. I used to have to sleep 8 and 9 hours. Right. So those extra 2 and 3 hours, I'm exercising, or, you're just living a fuller life. Absolutely. And that's unfortunately, not a reality for a lot of people.
Mm.
Right. We're stressed out beyond belief. That tiger never stops chasing us. Talking about fight or flight. We are just constantly go. And, as much as you were saying people are jealous of us for where we live, but people hustle down here. People don't realize that, it's not all just right. Beach parties. And and then there are those unique weekends where you have to choose between beach parties. But other than that, it's a pretty hectic lifestyle here. Just like anywhere else in the U.S. So just trying to keep up with that. On that note, I'm going to let you go, Carolyn. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. You can visit us at nutritionheretic.com, where you can find Carolyn Dean's video, and we'll have her YouTube videos posted up there. All right.
Well, thank you, Nutrition Heretic. It's been fantastic. I know we can continue, but people's time is limited. They have to get to work, so we'll stop now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we'll catch up offline, and thank you so much again for being with us. And mahalo. And please, mahalo to you. And please come back when you have either a new book or new product or anything else you want to talk about.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Adrienne.
All right. Thank you.
The Nutrition Heretic podcast is a production of Savor the Journey, LLC. Our audio editor is Nicola Popovich. Our podcast manager is Crystal McLean. And our operations manager is Michelle Med. I'm your host, Adrienne Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. You can find us at the new and improved nutritionheretic.com, where you can download the Nutrition Heretic's free shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague. You can also listen to previous episodes at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Be sure to like us on social media for updates. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/nutritionheretic and on Twitter @NutriHeretic. Contact us with show ideas, questions, or if you want to be a guest. And don't forget to rate our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.